This morning's Old Testament reading comes from Psalm 4. If you'd like to follow along in the Pew Bible, it can be found on page 490. Answer me when I call, O God of my right. You gave me room when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. How long, you people, shall my honor suffer shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the faithful for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. When you are disturbed, do not sin. Ponder it on your beds and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, "Oh, that we might see some good. Let the light of your face shine on us, O Lord." You have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grain and wine abound. I will both lie down and sleep in peace, for you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety.
Next scripture reading comes from the Acts of the Apostles. It kind of follows and chronicles the early Christians and especially the disciples that were close to Jesus, and a lot of the acts that they did and what they kind of were doing once Christ left and they were on their own. So Acts chapter 3, verses 12 through 19. Seeing this, Peter addressed the people. "You Israelites, why are you amazed at this? Why are you staring at us if we made him walk by our own power or piety? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our ancestors, has glorified his servant Jesus. This is the one you handed over and denied in Pilate's presence, even though he had already decided to release him. You rejected the holy and righteous one and asked that a murderer be released to you instead. You killed the author of life, the very one whom God raised from the dead. We are witnesses of this. His name itself has made this man strong. That is, because of faith in Jesus' name, God has strengthened this man whom you see and know. The faith that comes through Jesus gave him complete health right before your eyes. But brothers and sisters, I know you acted in ignorance, and so did your rulers. But this is how God fulfilled what he foretold through all the prophets, that is, Christ would suffer. But change your hearts and lives. But turn back to God so that your sins may be wiped away. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God." You guys are in for a special treat today. I brought my friend Wilbur the werewolf to preach to you. Just kidding. It's just plain old me. But there have been a few moments in my life where I thought to myself, man, I wish I did not know that. Or I wish I hadn't heard that. Some examples can include knowing how hot dogs are made, how open heart surgery occurs and what is actually done with that, and how some other animals are just treated around the world. Additionally, if I hear some kind of form of gossip or a secret that's shared with me, usually I instantly regret it. I think, man, I wish I hadn't heard that. So this can carry over to our children or our grandchildren or our nephews and nieces too, right? We much prefer that they remain intentionally ignorant to most situations. We don't always want them knowing fully what might be going on in our life or what we might be dealing with as an adult. If we're struggling financially, we try not to share that with our children. If we've had a rough day, we try not to let it get us down and take it out on them or vent or have it spill over onto their poor, innocent shoulders. We try to protect our children by keeping them ignorant of certain things on purpose, right? So in fact, this past week, I found a community website where people got on there and typed and had these forums and shared some of their childhood experiences. And they said how grateful they were for their loving parents and how they didn't always know 100% of the truth or the struggles that their parents dealt with. So for example, this one person got on there and said, as a child, their single mother always told them that they had frequent blackouts at the house. It was just a tough area for the power grid where they lived, so a power would go on one day and just cut off the next, and eventually it would come back on. So once they left their home and got to college, their eyes were open a little bit, and they started living in a dorm that was very close to home, and they remarked, man, the power company finally got their act together. We don't have as many blackouts in college as we did in my home. But come to find out, this person's mother just struggled to pay the power bill. So they would have their power cut off and then it would come back on. So they never knew that. And they were grateful for their parents for protecting them from that. They didn't have to burden that responsibility. And so there are moments in our lives and the lives of others where ignorance is called for and can be justified. Protecting the innocence of sweet little children, or preventing undue harm or hurt to someone else. It can even serve to attempt or quell the fears or anxieties of one we know that will be strongly affected by certain information or knowledge. But there are also many times in our life where ignorance can be quite detrimental. And it can lead to some excuses that people might use or rely upon them as a way out, saying, oh, I didn't know. But I can tell you one thing, ignorance does not fly when it comes to taxes or laws or electrical or water obligations, right? You can't go to the IRS and just say, well, I didn't know we had to pay taxes. No one told me. Can't you just let me off easy this one time? No, it doesn't work that way, right? So there's some areas where we just can't be ignorant about a lot of that stuff in general. But this is the case that was being made for the people that Peter was addressing in his discussion of Christ and his life. So in today's reading, the author of Acts, which most affirm that is Luke, he wants to remind the people that yes, they have made a grave mistake by going along with the crowd and calling for Christ's crucifixion. Yes, there were some major flaws with that line of thinking. But they rejected the holy and righteous one and asked that a murderer be released to them instead. And now they killed the author of life, the very one whom God raised from the dead. Those are some pretty serious and egregious errors. The ones that claims of ignorance can't simply just wash away and fix. They can't hide behind their supposed ignorance, proclaiming, well, we didn't know it was God's Son. See, how are we supposed to know that? Ignorance often gets transformed into a personal predicament, one that's only kind of discernible by the individual. See, we know where our thoughts, our hearts, and our minds, and our outlook kind of lies, and really other people can't always judge us. We know deep down where we stand on a position about a person, a situation, or an event. And so ignorance largely boils down to an individual, but can quickly spread to a larger crowd, as was the case with the crowd in Jesus Christ. So this is one intriguing nugget when it comes to ignorance. That it usually is left up to the individual person to decide whether or not they might believe in something, as we've been talking about for 2 weeks, or what their current thoughts and feelings are about a subject, or an individual, or certain worlds, or nations, or situations. So that's kind of how ignorance gets formed, right? We just know about our own little cloister, our own little thing, and don't know much about the stuff that surrounds us. For instance, if I were to say, I don't know what it's like to taste durian. So for those of you that aren't familiar, it's an Asian delicacy, specifically in Malaysia where it's big. But supposedly it's very stinky. I've never had it, so I don't know. So if I've not had and partook in this durian fruit delicacy that smells, I can't say that all durian is bad, right? Unless I've tasted it or tried it, then I can only be equipped to say, I don't like it. And even if I don't like one, I couldn't say that I don't like all durian. I've never had it, so I don't know. If you have some, you're welcome to let me try it. That's fine. But that's how we kind of view people, ourselves, the world around us, certain subjects, and in all manner of things, based on our own personal experience or our own personal knowledge. So as the people Peter addressed were probably thinking to themselves, well, how are we to know this was really God's Son? We had it in our minds exactly what was supposed to happen when the Savior was returning. We knew what should take place, and so our own kind of thoughts for that. When that didn't happen, of course we say it's not Jesus Christ. And so, even though he repeatedly performed miracles, he repeatedly went against the grain and healed the sick and tended to the outcast and the needy. He repeatedly performed selfless acts and never once showed any inkling of violence or hatred. How are we supposed to know? You see, our ignorance kept the truth at bay, and in doing so, we cost this poor, innocent man his life. Look, ignorance happens. I get that. Sometimes we just can't help it. Similarly, people are confronted with the mistakes that they've made, either far in the past or ones of recent nature, as the people that Peter addressed were. He confronted them that day and said, your ignorance erased all of this work that Jesus had done. Or they were approached with a certain knowledge that they may be skeptical of, and I get that sometimes. Sometimes we just might have questions or not fully understand something and just say, keep it at bay and I'll be fine. But sooner or later you would hope that someone would realize the truth, right? But why didn't this crowd of people come around and see that it was, in fact, the Son of God? We know that mistakes had been made and that shortcomings were faced in regards to what they said that fateful day. Yet what is crucial is when it comes down to both mistakes and our potential ignorance is that we learn from them and we grow. A big secret and key to life is having this burning desire to continually learn, right? So we need to make that a major focus of our own life in every way possible. As parents, as professionals, as preachers, as teachers, as moms and dads, as grandmas and grandpas, as students, daughters, sons, and as a part of a loving and faithful community. Every aspect of our life should be approached with this desire and this burning passion and this willingness to learn and to grow, no matter how much we feel we've mastered a certain subject or topic. Sadly, though, no matter how much we might know, sometimes our knowledge does not always align with our behavior. For instance, have you ever heard the saying, you know better, do better? You ever heard that before? Commonly it's used with children, right? So if we teach them no biting, no stealing, no punching, no spitting, no hitting, no crying, no flailing, no running, no coming, all this other different stuff, they should know better, right? So you tell them, if they do one of those things, say, you know better, do better, right? But even though we know something, doesn't mean our actions always line up with that sort of knowledge. So sometimes we act a certain way, even though we know it's not right. And this can happen for adults too. And this is very clear, the individual people that cried out for the death of Jesus Christ. You see, deep down, I think they knew he was innocent. Yet they went along with the crowd. A select few, if you will, in order to not stand as opposition against him. But perhaps some of them were innocent. Maybe others were just ignorant. The problem is nobody stood up and spoke out against what was going on. They remained blissful in their ignorance of who Jesus was and what his life truly meant. And so one of the best quotes I've seen of late came from Jill Duffield. She's a Presbyterian pastor and editor of the Presbyterian Outlook, a published magazine. She stated this very strong statement in regards to ignorance. She said, ignorance may be bliss for the one who is ignorant, but those living in the orbit of one who is oblivious may experience things very differently. Right? So if we're in this world of ignorance, yeah, it feels great to us. If I don't know what taxes entail, that's fine. Someone else can do them. Or if I don't know about a certain subject, I'm happy. I'm fine, I'm content. I don't need to know more about that or how hot dogs are made. But with certain things, people suffer from our own ignorance. It makes it very frustrating for those around us. But we all have that friend, right? We've all got to have someone that's stubbornly ignorant about something. Yeah, we still love them and appreciate them, but how frustrated do we get when it boils down to something they're adamant and ignorant about on a constant basis? It's not fun. It's hard. It's challenging for us. So when push comes to shove, I feel a critical piece to keep in mind in this whole message, that ignorance can be bliss. I'm not going to lie, it is kind of nice to be ignorant about certain things sometimes and just to not know. We don't have to know everything about anything in the world and have that kind of knowledge. So sometimes it's just nice to live in our own little bubble-protected world. And there are appropriate times to use it, as with children from time to time. But we have to be careful about hanging on to that for too long. Because if we do, those around us will be affected. So in the end, we need to work on shedding whatever ignorance we might have or carry with us. Whether it's a whole heap or just a little speck of it. The best thing we can do is work on purging it from our own thoughts and hearts. Yes, ignorance can be quite blissful, but those around us might not feel the same way. And so instead, if we work on intentionally getting rid of it, imagine not only how we feel about others, but imagine how they might feel about us. I know I've told you this many times before, and I use this a lot in conversations, but it's hard to know about someone unless you walk in their shoes, right? To know their situation, what troubles they might be going through, unless we've been there and done that. So the best way to go about this is to ask ourselves, how do we feel about people that are homeless or hungry? Perhaps we judge them without knowing their situation. So maybe we need to partake in a 30-hour famine as the youth did a few weeks ago, to know what it's like to go to bed without having food, on an empty stomach. But what does it mean, or what's our stance or feeling towards prisoners? And maybe we need to go visit a prison to see what they have to deal with, to see how they live, or just understand their story. Maybe they just had a rough childhood. Maybe they just made a simple mistake. But we can't categorize and know every single one unless we get to know them. So how do we feel about politicians? I know this may think this is an easy answer, but it's not. You know, all of them are doing the work, or most of them are doing the work, and they want this world to be a better place. They want people to excel and succeed in life. And the life of a public servant is hard. They have to sacrifice family time, personal time, home time. So maybe we can cut them a break every once in a while, even if we don't agree with what they might decide. So maybe we should sit a politician down and interview them. And saying, how is your life? What is it like? That's a big burden to make decisions that will impact an entire country, or an entire state, or even a county, or a city. A public servanthood is very hard. It's a tough burden to be a leader. So how do you think the people who persecuted and called for Christ's crucifixion would have acted if they had taken some time to get to know Jesus Christ? Instead of just showing up that day and saying, crucify him, crucify him. And maybe you go to where Jesus is preaching and teaching and healing and say, tell me a little bit more about yourself. You see, we can't approach life with a simple ignorance mentality. One that seeks to discard truths for the sake of our own betterment or our own agendas or our own well-being. A one that hopes to remain in the state of bliss at the expense of those around. The one that refuses to believe that God's word or Jesus Christ and the sacrifice that he made in this world. And so in essence, we need to learn. We need to grow. We need to shed any semblance of ignorance we might have. It may be blissful, yes, but it's certainly not for those around us. Just ask Jesus Christ. Amen.